What's going on, Bird Gang? This is Darren Sproles here. I just want to thank y'all for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star rating. Fly Eagles Fly.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. However you're listening, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, we greatly appreciate it. My co-host here, Tyler Steege, in the house. Tyler, you reached out. You said, we need to bring this guest on the show. We need to have a debate. So I don't want to take away the Steege special you have planned for me. Go ahead. Let's have this great debate that you had planned, because you're like, oh, look who I just DM'd. Look who just answered. Let's have a great episode. I was like, all right, let's do it. So Tyler, take it away. It's the Steege special episode.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a Steege special. That's a bit extreme there. But yeah, I for all you guys don't know, WIP. Joe, I don't want to butcher it's Giglio. Giglio. Okay, there it is. Yeah, so I've only interacted with you on Twitter. I haven't been the nicest in the responses. I'm very passionate, just like a representation of the Eagles fan base. And you released a article about Carson Wentz, and that this could be this is almost like a deciding factor season, depending on how good he is. And that was. I got a little triggered, so I sent a DM and I just said, hey, let's just do this, because this has been going on for a while. Obviously, I have my thoughts on Wentz. Conor has his and you have yours. And so I just want to have a fun debate and just talk about why. And I'm excited. So thank you again for actually responding and actually joining us, because we were stoked when you responded. So.
Well, look, I'm happy to be here. Look, this is what I do every day. So, like, this is way more fun for me than Twitter replies or, nonsense on there. But when you said you want to come on, I was like, yeah, let's talk. So I'm up for whatever we want to talk about. And I know you brought – in the article I wrote last week, I guess, was kind of the impetus for inviting me on the show. So let me – I'll just start off by explaining what I was thinking when I wrote it, because –
You're wrong.
No. Well, I'll tell you why I think I'm right. So as always with headlines, like you look at the headline and if, I'm sure most people on social media don't read the whole thing. So it's like, oh, he thinks Carson thinks he's getting cut after the season. Not my point. So here's my point. Two things are factoring into, I think, the future of the Eagles. One, obviously they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. So let's just put that there on the side for a second, because that happened. The second thing is, all this COVID stuff is going to destroy the salary cap. The Eagles next year anyway. Like, the Eagles are $50 million over the salary cap for next year. Basically, right? Because the cap's going down $30 million. So usually the Eagles are usually so good with the salary cap, but this is a problem for them. So I was thinking through, like, all right, how do they fix this, right? How does Howie Roseman fix the salary cap issue? And I think Carson Wentz is the obvious answer. If he plays great this coming season, I think they're going to restructure his contract. And guys, there's going to be no doubt he's going to be here for the next 5, 6, 7 years, because they're going to extend it. Like, they're going to kind of move the money down the line. And if he plays great, he's going to be here. That's kind of the make part of the make or break season. He'll be here for a long time. If he doesn't, I think they have a decision to make, because they has a big cap number for 2021. If they leave it the way it is and Carson plays okay but not great, I think his future's murky here, because then moving forward, like, he counts for 20% of the salary cap. You have to be great, guys. You have to be Mahomes, Wilson. If you're going to count for 20% of the salary cap, you better be great. So my whole point is, if Carson plays great this year, they will extend his contract, they will move the money around, and there'll be no doubt he's staying here, and the Hurts pick will just be a weird thing they did. If he doesn't play great, I don't think they're going to extend his contract. I think he'll have a big cap number for 2021, and then it's like, year to year, we're going to wonder what they're going to do at quarterback, because they have to pay so much to Carson Wentz. So that's why I think his play this year, it either shuts this conversation forever, or it leaves it out there. Like, if he plays okay and they don't extend his contract, then 2 years from now, when they have an out and he counts for 20% of the salary cap and they have Hurts for no money, I think it becomes a question they have to figure out.
So there's two big things here. One is what is considered great? Because if the Eagles scrape into the playoffs 9-7, let's say they get banged up with injuries again, he doesn't have a great supporting cast, or what is considered great for you for it to be justified that he is the guy moving forward, other than him, needing to play in a playoff game? Because that's
right. I think with this, like it's tough to do the team stuff, right? Like playoff game, a playoff win, 9-7. Like there are certain quarterbacks I don't think we think about it anymore. Patrick Mahomes is great. Russell Wilson is great. Then I think there's a lot of guys that's like, depending on who you debate with, they might think they're great. They might think they're good. Is Deshaun Watson great yet? I think he's really good. Really good. He's kind of teetering. He might soon be great, but he's not there yet. Is Drew Brees still great? I don't know. He can't throw the ball more than 20 yards down the field, but he's obviously really good. Yeah, I think if we end this season and there's no doubt in all three of our minds that Carson played great, my thing is I think they're going to change the contract and commit to him again. It's like they can commit to him again after this season. And if they don't, then I think the whole situation's like, well, what are they doing here? Like, is he going to be here long term? That was really the premise of my article. Like, if he plays great, he shuts the conversation up. If he doesn't, I think this is a question.
And I read your article, by the way, because I write, so I'm not going to just go for the headlines. That would be against my nature. I actually read the article, so I completely understand your point of emphasis in that. Regardless of what happens next year, they have to change the contract. They're going to have to approach him. It's going to be like him, Wayne Johnson, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, because that cap is such a bad situation as it is. But to me, like you said, there's no way any of this happens in 2020 until 2023. So it's too early to have this conversation. We don't, because even if he does come out next year and say the Eagles fall flat on their face, they have a bunch of injuries, Wentz can't overcome it this time, they can't make that decision going into the next year saying we can go with Jalen Hurts now, with considering this pandemic going on. I think it's a whole lost season for Jalen Hurts. I'm scratching this whole rookie season off right now. There's no way you can be a rookie quarterback coming into this situation besides being like a Joe Burrow who was first to play but with no expectations to really put any expectations on these rookie quarterbacks. So especially Jalen Hurts, who's way be far behind in development. He has so much more developing to do. But, very well, the $59 million in dead cap next year, if they try to trade Carson Wentz and move on from him, I think it's 38 the year prior, then it's 15 in 2023. That's when you make the decision. So for me, when I read the article, I got the point, but there's no way it can be determined this season.
Well, it can be on this. If he plays great, I think they change the contract and it ends the conversation like it's over, right? If they change this contract and make it a longer-term thing, he's not going anywhere for 5 years. If he doesn't play great, I think it'll hang out there. My point is, if they leave the contract alone, and in 2021, 2022, he's got huge cap numbers, and you have Jalen Hurts sitting there and he's cheap, like I think it leaves like if the Eagles wanted to make this move, Conor, a year from now, like it hangs out there. Like if Jalen Hurts had to play, if he had to come in because Carson got injured or something and he played well, I think all of a sudden it's like, well, they could go to him in a year if they wanted to. Like I think Carson could end this and make the Jalen Hurts pick seem even sillier than a lot of people think it is if he plays great. If he doesn't, I think it's like it just hangs there. That they have another cheap quarterback.
2019. Yeah.
Carson. I thought he played well. Obviously, it was a weird season, right? Because he played well in the beginning, it felt like, and no one was helping him. Then I thought in the middle he didn't play very well, like through November. And then he played great in December, right? December was great. It's a weird season where it's like up, it's kind of plateauing, and then back up again. So I thought he played well. I mean, I thought last year was a thumbs up for him. He stayed healthy. I'm not going to bang him for the Jadeveon Clowney hit. He played 16 games. And I thought he played well, and he played his best down the stretch. And he did the one thing that, like, I think we all question, like, is he going to deliver in the clutch? Is he going to make big plays down the stretch of games and win games? And, Washington game and the New York game he did.
In 2019 he showed a lot. Like 2017, the Eagles were the big dog of the league. I mean, they were just running down people's throats. They were kind of controlling the possession. I think in 2019 you kind of saw Carson Wentz grow as a player. But I guess big picture is Carson Wentz is only 27. So when if you have a decent or good quarterback, you're going to have to pay him. And so I guess the root of your argument is you're kind of relying on a huge if on Jalen Hurts. And it's like, we have no idea what kind of player this guy is. And he is a huge projection coming out. So it's really hard to even have this conversation of, because Carson has shown so much to me. It's eliminated his rookie year because we know what he went through. The very next year, he gives you the number 1 seed, and then everything happens with Foles. But he put you in that position. 2018, the injury, and then we just gave him a thumbs up in 2019. So it's like, that is where my confusion is we shouldn't even be having this conversation because it's so difficult to find a franchise quarterback. And I know that you don't think Wentz is as good as I do. I think he's near the top 5 conversation. You mentioned those top 3, Mahomes, Wilson, Breeze. There's the top tier guys. But I think after that, there is the Watson, there is the Wentz, there is, I'm drawing blanks on others, but there is a group of guys that are kind of there. And if you have one of those, I don't think the conversation is we may move on. It needs to be, we're going to build around you. And I think that's what, go ahead. Sorry.
No, so 2 things on that. I mean, generally, I agree with you. That's kind of the way football's been our whole lives, right? You have that quarterback. If you have a guy you think's a top 10 guy, why would you even consider anything else? That's kind of the way our brains have always been wired. But 2 things I think have changed here. One is the salary cap is not continuing to go up. Like Wentz is, I guess the way I look at players is, are you worth what you're being paid? And Carson's good, but because like he was going to be a steal, right? That was the whole idea of the contract. We pay him early. He's a steal. That's not really the case anymore because of what happened with the salary cap here. Like if he costs 20% of the salary cap, he's got to be what you're saying, Tyler, he is, which is one of those top 5, 6, 7 guys. If he's that, okay, then it's probably worth the money. The second thing is, I think what's happened in the CBA since 2011 when that CBA came in, that old one, the rookie quarterback's the greatest advantage in the NFL. The cheap quarterback. Think about the last 4 or 5 teams to make the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl, right? Mahomes cheap. I'll count the Eagles, right? Foles won it, but the team was built around Carson's cheap salary.
Same thing, yeah.
Right. So, like, that plays into my mind that you're right, that you have one of those quarterbacks. But I just wonder as time goes on, are teams going to start saying, we have a good young quarterback. We're probably going to have to pay him. But at some point, we're going to want to find the next young, cheap quarterback, like almost a revolving door of quarterbacks. Now, maybe the Eagles won't do this, but guys, they drafted a quarterback in the 2nd round. I didn't do that. Like, I didn't tell them to draft Jalen Hurts. I was surprised as you guys were when they did it. And I don't know if Hurts is going to be good either. I'm not going to pretend to be some sort of like college football guru. I mean, I watched some of the bowl games he played in. But like the one thing I'll give the Eagles credit on, and Howie credit, I know we want to talk about Howie too, they're pretty good when they pick a quarterback early in drafts. Kevin Kolb obviously did not work. But think about the last, they haven't drafted many the last 20-something years. Donovan, Carson, Nick Foles was 3rd round pick. Like when the Eagles decide to take a quarterback relatively high in the draft, 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, they're usually pretty decent players. So I don't know if Hurts can play, but they do. And I think about the salary cap stuff. So that's why I bring it up, because they've created this thing that makes me think, like, what are they doing at quarterback? Why do you guys think they took Hurts?
So my crazy theory into all this, just to go into with it, the Eagles didn't have to extend Carson Wentz. I think they're more sold on him, way more sold on him in that building than maybe you are, perhaps, because it's not like they were forced into a Dak Prescott situation. They had the 5th-year option to play with. He was coming off a season-ending back injury, and they were like, Nick Foles is going to be gone. We're going to let him hit free agency. We're done with this franchise tag. We're done with the interesting stuff with him, trading him, or anything. We're just going to let him go. We're going to focus on paying Carson Wentz. So they set this deal up knowing, hey, he can get injured again. He's coming off this bad back injury. This contract is essentially no matter what, because Carson doesn't have to renegotiate next offseason regardless of what we think. He doesn't. It's his contract. It's his decision. So to me, the Eagles knew right when they gave that contract, 4 years we're tied to this guy, no matter what. 4 years we are set with Carson Wentz as our quarterback. When you're looking at the league landscape and you're talking about the coronavirus impact on the cap, and you look at all these backup quarterback deals, like the Chase Daniels deal, the Case Keenum deal, Nick Foles' deal in Chicago, if none of those guys make any impact this season at all to that team, they're going to get rid of those deals because they have to cut savings from positions that they're not going to get impact from. And I think we're going to see a trend in the league where all the backup quarterbacks next year, because even in Dallas, they go through this yearly now, are very low-tier caliber players. So now I'm thinking Howie Roseman, the Philadelphia Eagles, who go out and get Jeff Garcia, go out and get Michael Vick, go out and get Vince Young, go out and get the polarizing Mark Sanchez, the polarizing backup figures, say, we can handle this situation with a guy like Jalen Hurts we can't rely on Carson Wentz's durability. No matter what you think, no matter what I think, no matter what Tyler thinks, no matter what any Eagles fan thinks, Carson Wentz has durability issues.
No doubt,
it's
right.
the truth.
Injury prone and durability are two different things. People get all upset about injury prone because you can't prove injury prone.
Right.
But durability, he hasn't been durable.
100%.
So my point is, Howie goes, sees this guy at the Senior Bowl because Mike Hayes come on the show and said that's where Howie Roseman just was completely enamored, was when he talked to him at the Senior Bowl. Talks to this guy at the Senior Bowl, says, you know what? Instead of taking like a Clayton Thorson, instead of taking like or hoping Nate Sudfeld pans out, why don't we take the sure thing in Jalen Hurts that we know could be the backup quarterback who's handled it at Alabama perfectly, who came into Oklahoma and really refined himself as a quarterback. Why don't we put him here? And if Carson Wentz goes down, we can go strict RPO offense like we did with Nick Foles with a mobile quarterback like Jalen Hurts, and he's on a backup salary. So to me, they knew that now that they paid Carson Wentz and he's not on his rookie deal anymore, they cannot afford to go out and get that luxury backup. And I know you're going to bring up Cam Newton, Jameis Winston's contracts, but maybe the Eagles decided, hey, why don't we get a guy on that salary for 4 years instead of 1 and keep doing this revolving door thing at backup quarterback when Carson Wentz had durability issues as is? And to your point, it's not like your article is wrong. That theory could end up, all those theories could end up being true. If Carson Wentz doesn't perform, or he gets injured again, or hey, maybe the Andrew Luck thing goes into his head. The Eagles are in a position where, hey, they got Jalen Hurts. So I think that there's so many possibilities with this where Howie Roseman was like, hey, that's a lot more positives than there is negatives. I'm going to go ahead and take this quarterback in the second round.
I get that. No, that's I think what the Eagles have tried to tell us and probably are. I mean, there's some thinking you're saying there, Conor, that definitely was part of their thinking, especially the savings, which they brought up before, and the backup thing. The part that confuses me, though, is you don't usually see teams do this. Maybe the Eagles are ahead of the curve, right? Maybe they are. I mean, teams usually don't take a second-round pick quarterback unless they have an old quarterback. Carson's not old, he's 27. Or they have a guy they don't believe in. And I generally agree with you guys. Like, they believe in him. They gave him the contract. They drafted number 2 overall. They like Carson Wentz. The theory I had on day one when they drafted Hurts, I was on the air, like, doing the draft show the night they did it. I was shocked. Is that they have some doubts that Carson's going to get back to the level he was in 2017, right? And maybe they think, like I think, like value money. If he's the 10th best quarterback, is he worth all this money? Like Tyler, if he's as good, if he's a top 5 quarterback, he's going to be the Eagles quarterback for a long time. I think everyone realizes that, and he should be. But I just wonder if the Eagles say to themselves, like, if he's only the 10th or 11th best quarterback, just throwing it out there, is he worth the money we committed to him? Or should we go with a younger guy like that? Otherwise, why draft? Like, it's just so strange. Teams don't draft second-round pick quarterback.
We had so a couple things. I don't think we talked about the contract. The
Right.
Eagles were way ahead of the market on the contract. So I think in 2 years, they may have to have to restructure. But I don't think Carson Wentz isn't going to be being paid as a top 5 guy. That's not going to happen. I mean, they were way ahead of the market. Watson still needs to be paid. Mahomes, sure. Prescott, like it's not as if this contract. And so if we're factoring in the salary cap reducing because of the COVID, that's everywhere. So everybody's going to be
everyone. Garoppolo's going to be a problem for the Niners. Cousins for the Vikings. Like, but still, it's still a problem for the Eagles, right? Because they're over the cap. And
if I have a guy that's even flirting with the top 10, it is such a difficult thing to find a franchise quarterback. It is not an easy thing. And if Wentz has already shown us that he can get us to the Super Bowl, and yes, we know that Foles did what he did, but if he put us in position to do that, then and then 2019 he showed us everything. I get what it is on 2020. I don't think it is heavily on 2020 that we're making it. He could have an average year. I don't think it's going to happen, but he can have an average year, and I don't even think we're having a discussion about Jalen Hurts next year. I think there was a plethora of reasons why he was selected without it having any correlation to Wentz other than his durability. And they were like, hey, the last 3 years, we haven't had you. We need you in the playoffs. We're not going to rely on a McCown. And I think that would be the clear cut, like, hey, let's just do. And as Conor noted, you don't want to just be doing this rotation every single year on backups and taking this chance. Why don't you just get this chemistry in here? And Hurts off the field is amazing. He's not this guy that's just going to say, hey, I want to be a starter, yada, yada. So there's so many variables. I just don't think that they're anywhere near it's, hey, 2020, if Wentz is a top 15 quarterback, we're going to have to maybe move on.
What do you guys make of the way they talk about Hurts? Like, they they did a lot of.
Well, I mean, Joe, to your point though, you do have a point though. If Carson Wentz doesn't finish for the playoffs and like keeps getting hurt, and there's gonna, I mean, there has to be a point where Joe's right. He's taking up the majority of the cap. If it does go that route again, I'm not sure that with Jalen Hurts being in the building, they're as lenient as maybe they were. I think it's a fair point. That's what I'm saying. That's for this take. I don't think it's as crazy if you read the article. Obviously, of course, I think a lot of people did just fall for the headline. If you actually read the article, the points.
I got it. I don't think
it
the top
will.
100 list was listed.
Well, I was trying to go through all these different things. Like, I was like, listen, it's okay to look at what other people think. I think the top 100 list is silly. I mean, come on. It's Todd Gurley was on there.
It's super silly, man. Those guys, those NFL guys go on NFL Network and they laugh while they're doing it. I think they know, like, you know what? I don't really like that guy anymore. He beat my team.
Right.
I'm not going to vote.
And
for
then,
him.
like, think about it.
That's why I think.
Think about like when you see the player. Like NFL players. Look, they know a lot. They're NFL players. They don't watch as much football as we do, right? They're busy. They're playing the games. Like on Sunday, we're watching football all day. Yeah, like, think about the game. Like Carson played Seattle during the season. Obviously, didn't play well in that game. If a Seattle player got the list and said fill it out the next week, he wouldn't put Carson on. But if Washington in week 1, if you hand the list to I have to keep remembering they're the Washington football team now. But if you hand them to the Washington players after week 1, they're all going to write Carson down. He played well, right? It's just like biased to when you saw the player. It's silly, but
right. That's why I don't really pay attention to those lists anymore. But I mean, to me, I thought, and people think this is crazy. Last year, I thought was Carson Wentz's best season as a pro. To be honest with you, because everything wasn't going right around him, and in a league where we're dominated by the deep passing. Deshaun does it. Russell does it. Mahomes obviously does it. But they have those guys to create separation. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett create separation. Deshaun had Hopkins, Stills. Now he has Cooks. Mahomes obviously knows Watkins, Hardman, and Hill. That has to go into the equation here, Joe, because the Eagles, ever since Torrey Smith, have not had a game in and game out speed threat. That limits so much what you can do in an offense, especially in this passing era. So to me, when I look at the completion percentage and I look at the passer rating and I look at the yards, I have to take into account these are in this passing era of league. Carson Wentz is playing with very minimal wide receiver talent. The best wide receiver he's played with so far in his career is Deshaun Jackson. That was a game.
Oh, you're right. I throw Alshon his first year in there. Like Alshon was a good player.
Alshon was good. It was just I'm so stuck on this thing where I think that report where Alshon came out and said, to Josina, he targets Ertz a lot, meant something to me because I don't think Alshon and Wentz fit at all. I think they're a awful fit.
I agree with you. And I every time this comes up, I try to make sure I say it first. Like, I agree. He has not had good wide receivers, right? He hasn't had enough at wide receiver. They need to get him more. Hopefully Rager, who I like Rager. I think he's going to be a good player. Hopefully he's something. But I do think sometimes we get caught up as football fans in like, I'm not saying you're doing this. I just mean in general, like the fantasy football aspect of things. Like Carson has had some deficiencies he's had to work through. Deep passing game, right? Wide receivers. He also has had, for the most part, and I'm kind of worried about this year, excellent offensive line. And he's had at least one star tight end. Now I think he's got 2 star tight ends. So like he's got some things that other guys don't have. Look, Deshaun Watson, right? They're similar age, come in the league 1 year apart. Like Deshaun has had DeAndre Hopkins. Carson hasn't had that. But like, can we name tight ends that Deshaun Watson's played with? His offensive line has always been a problem. They traded for Tunsil. That worked out. But it's like that's the NFL. Like you're going to have some things good, some things not so good. Kirk Cousins, who I think is pretty good. Everyone thinks he stinks. But like he's had 2 good receivers. He's had a great back now in Dalvin Cook. He's had a bad offensive line. It's like it's you can't have everything. So I agree with you. I think it hurts his yards per attempt. I think it hurts his deep passing. But I can't also say like, he's been given nothing. Like the Eagles have given Carson a lot. Like if you give a quarterback good offensive line, tight ends, and now a star back, you're going to move the ball. You're going to score points. It's going to be different than other quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I just think in this era of football that we're in, you got to be
able to stretch the field.
You
have to.
It has to be downfield. Yes, you have, especially in the West Coast spread type concept offense. They need to have stuff to start going downfield. But I agree with you. You're absolutely. That's why when people tell me Deshaun Watson's better than Carson Wentz, I really don't debate him that much because I'm like, you know what? Deshaun Watson's running for his life all the time. He reminds me of Russell Wilson's earlier years in Seattle. So I don't get mad at that opinion. I'm like that. You could definitely think that. I think they're both the same caliber quarterback. I think they're interchangeable to me. I think Carson Wentz is a top 10 quarterback. I don't think he's top 5 yet. I think he's top 5 caliber. But, I mean, I can seriously take that into account because you insert Torrey Smith, who, again, wasn't the best wide receiver. His box score really doesn't shine out at you in Philadelphia. But exactly. And that impact on a 16-game, even 13-game for Carson Wentz showed because everything was smooth. He was clicking. He was getting guys in separation. And you know, just as well as Tyler does, as well as I do, he loves targeting Ertz because he gets separation. You add in Deshaun Jackson, who is one of the best separators in the game. He targeted him immediately the first game they were together. And they were tied for second in the most in the league for 40-plus yards touchdowns last year. They only played one game. So, to me, hopefully, because I agree with you, I'm really high on Jalen Reagor. Maybe now that Joe Douglas is gone and the whole mantra of we need to get guys that are strictly based on production, and now they start looking, hey, we invested so much in Carson Wentz. This contract, to me, he's regardless their quarterback for the next 3 years. Maybe we start putting guys around him that fit what he wants, because I don't think they've ever done that before up until probably now, because they have Reagor, Hightower, Watkins, Deshaun, they kept around even after all this stuff's going on. So maybe now they're thinking, hey, maybe let's get guys that fit our quarterback.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know.
You said, Connor, you thought last year was his best year. And I've heard that debate, right? 17 or 19, what was more impressive? Totally different years. When you watch him with your eyes, like forget the stats or games or yards, when your eye test, do you see the same guys you saw in 17? I don't see it still. Like we've seen flashes.
I don't see someone as fluid because I see someone who thinks he has to has to do a lot. But I mean, if Matt Collins, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, or who you're throwing to most of the time,
that's to look better when you have legit. Yeah, when you can actually move the ball. Yes, it is nice to because I agree. When I hate hearing. Carson Wentz carried, GameStop employees to the playoffs. I mean, he almost did at the receiver position, but other than that, he does have a good surrounding. It's just in today's NFL, it's really hard to eliminate. That's why the Eagles' penalties are going to stunt drives. Turnovers are going to stunt drives. If a guy can't create separation on a third down, then your drive is stunted. There's so many things that.
Yeah, there's such an underneath offense. That's not how it works. That's why you keep finishing 9-7 and not advancing the playoffs because there's no surprise element to your offense. That year there was a ton of surprise. There was Nick Folk doing flea fingers to Torrey Smith surprises.
It's very easy. It's very easy as a defense if you don't have to respect anybody stretching the field to just condense the game, and that makes Carson Wentz look worse.
But I will say. 2 years ago, 17. Like if you go once in a while, I do it. Like you go on YouTube, like his 2017 highlights. That was top 10 plays, right? The play against Seattle where he rolled out and he hit Nelson down the field, amazing throw. Obviously, week 1 against Washington where he's kind of spun around. The Bear play where he almost got sacked. He doesn't do those plays as much anymore. Like you go back to 17, it was Nelson Aguilar. It was twice. 2 of those plays I mentioned were Aguilar, who we know is not even that good. Like he made so many plays with his legs in 17. That receivers got open down the field because he just, ran around and made time. He doesn't do that as much anymore. I don't know if that's being coached out of him. I don't know if he physically can't do it anymore because the injury.
I think it's a mental issue. Yeah. I think it's a mental hurdle because I want to go back to when Donovan McNabb, for sake his ACL injuries and then the years that he would come back, he completely changed his whole aspect. He changed his whole style. He just stopped running all completely. So, I think. Because I think last year, once the season started going on, so when he's towards the end of the season, December, really, because you're right, November was awful, I thought, too. December is where you really started to see him roll out more, started being more confident because he had Greg Ward.
What I always compare it to is you ever watching baseball where the shortstop is off balance and makes a great throw, but he has plenty of time and he sets his feet and it's high? Yeah. That's Carson, right? Like if he's got to move and throw past the Sanders corner of the end zone, it's unreal. And then sometimes he stands in the pocket and it's why can't you deliver that 15-yard pass? We know you can do that.
Wentz is one of his biggest things that he needs to improve on. We talked about this is his ball security and his gimmies. His short accuracy. There's times where it's just dude, that's 5 yards. Why couldn't you connect there?
Right.
And that can stunt a drive. Those are even more crucial when you can't stretch the field.
Sure, it is you can't give away a play.
I always try to say that every good player has a flaw. Because we can bring out flaws in Mahomes, we can bring out flaws in Wilson, we can bring out flaws in Deshaun, Breeze, because like you just said, he can't get the ball downfield at all. I don't know what that offense is going to do this year with all the Emmanuel Sanders and all that additions, because he can't throw down the field at all. But the fumbling is just an issue. Because I read your Daniel Jones article and why you think he's poised for a huge breakout season, and you hinted at his fumbles in there too. Carson Wentz is along the same lines as that, to be honest with you.
And that's such a frustrating one. And that one's so frustrating. Like, it's one thing, like, mechanics, right? You missed a pass, you're like, all right, he can fix that. I don't get the fumbling thing. Like, it's not mental.
I think it dates back to North Dakota State, because he always has this thing in his head where he has to make a play. The play's never dead in Carson Wentz's head. And that is leading to the fumbling. So I appreciate it too, but I don't appreciate it to the point when it's like it's more negative now than it is positive. I think you do see some fans start to realize that as well. Like, Carson thrown out of bounds, or Carson, you take the sack. Or, you don't have to just keep doing all this magician stuff, because in 2017 he was getting away with it. I think now more teams are starting to say, hey, no, Carson Wentz can do more than just sit in the pocket. He can move outside the pocket. He can roll out. But the thing with me is, what we just saw in December, I think you saw the real Carson Wentz then. I think that's what we're going to see moving forward, because I think he's healthy. I think the back isn't an issue anymore. I think his legs are finally great. I think he's going to go into the season more fluid. I want to see more stuff on the outside, out of the pocket, though, because that's in 2017 when the play started breaking down inside the pocket, the offensive line started breaking down, especially when Big V got inserted. I know we always praise him for that playoff run, but he was awful in the regular season when he replaced Peters. When he would start to roll out, that's when the Eagles' big plays downfield were starting to happen. They need more of that, because it's not just going to be these wide receivers. It's going to have to be Carson Wentz rolling out more, creating more time for these guys to separate downfield. So that's another thing that I want to see huge from 2017 that we didn't really get to see that much last year.
I think it's fair to say we just have not seen the best Carson Wentz yet. I think it's pretty fair to say. Yeah.
I don't think we have either.
I think it was. I don't think
2017 was his ceiling.
Physically, I think it was 17. If he can get, like, people always say I don't like Wentz, and that's not true. Like, if you go back to what I said and talked about 17 and Wentz, I loved him. I loved him in 17. I just haven't seen the same guy since. If he could play like he did in 17, boy, I mean, that's, like, physically play like that, move around, make big plays, take something and make it nothing. That would be, the Eagles would be, it's a game changing if he could be that guy again.
It's really hard to do that when you have Greg Ward as your number one receiver.
Well, I agree. But, 17, it wasn't – Torrey Smith, Alshon, and Aguilar. We're not talking about 3 all-pros there. Like,
but there weren't injuries, though. But there weren't injuries. They had the balanced attack. Alshon was a solid number one. They had Torrey who could stretch the field. Aguilar was a really good slot. They have Ertz. They have a good O-line. They have a good run game. Everything's it's blended. It's so easy.
Let's just say Jalen Reagor pans out to be a young Deshaun. Let's just theoretically say that he gets – because then that will be the best consistent wide receiver that Carson Wentz has played with, because I don't think Alshon, if you want to go compare primes, I think I would take Deshaun's prime over Alshon's, to be honest with you. Fully debatable. But anyways, if Jalen Reagor becomes that player that I'm saying that he could be, I think Carson Wentz can take his game to a new level than he did in 2017, because I don't think – Alshon had tore rotator cuff that year. Torrey Smith was coming off a horrible 49ers tenure, where the Eagles even thought, your speed was great and everything, but you don't really give us that much. We can trade you for a cornerback that is about to get a DUI. And then Nelson Aguilar was a first-round bust for the Eagles, and that was 2017 was his outline season. So if you insert a Jalen Reagor who ends up panning out and being this great playmaker, I'm not that high on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but maybe you get something out of him, or maybe they go into the 21 draft and get another wide receiver. That's why I think you could possibly see a better 2017 season, because I don't think even the wide receiver talent he had then, yes, it was his best core he's ever had in the NFL. But, Deshaun laughs at that. Mahomes laughs at that. I think even Wilson's had better options. I think Doug Baldwin is better than Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith. So, to me, I know we keep bringing up this wide receiver issue. That's what mostly Twitter people do to defend him, and I hate that too, because I think the offensive line, first and foremost, is the most important thing. Once you have a offensive line that protects you well enough and plays the run as well as the Eagles do, that's really what's pivotal to running an offense. But in this era of passing, you need those guys downfield. And Carson Wentz has not had it. 2017 was the literally only season he has had that. And I think, again, we're going to get into Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson and all that, but I do think that they are at fault with that, because, Howie's given him his speed options. Torrey, 33-year-old Deshaun Jackson, and then Mike Wallace, who was a complete bust and what if even coming into this Philadelphia tenure. Jalen Reagor's the first really thing where I'm like, wow, they actually are really considering getting a playmaker that can make downfield play that has potential finally for Wentz because they haven't done that before. So to me, I think taking that stuff into account is the reason why I'm like, I'm not killing him for some of these stats that most people kill him for because it's such an underneath offense and it bothers me. But that's just my point where I think that he could be better than 2017 is because I don't think outside of Torrey Smith, he really had a downfield threat that if Deshaun Jackson plays 16 games last year, I guarantee you those stats are mind-boggling at once.
Agreed. That's a good segue, by the way, for a little Howie Roseman debate. You were talking about draft picks.
Yeah, Joe. So I wanted to get your take. What's your stance on Howie Roseman right now? I know this draft was, mind-boggling because even some people probably still think that they should have took Justin Jefferson over Reagor, and then obviously Hurts in the second. Davion Taylor in the third is a complete wild card as well. What is your take on Howie Roseman? Is he still up to his bad drafting things?
So I've had a weird feeling on Howie for some time. Like I always thought he was better than people gave him credit for before the Super Bowl. Like I think Howie's a good GM. Like Howie knows what he's doing and he's great with the cap. And I always thought it wasn't fair that he wasn't a football guy and all that. So I was pretty much like a Howie guy. And they won the Super Bowl. But I don't think he's done a great job since then. I think they hung on probably 1 year too long to try to keep that window open to win. And they've got older guys now. They've got a roster that obviously the salary cap's an issue moving forward. But I do think he was right this offseason. Like, remember at the Combine when he kind of said, we have to stop just playing for next year. We got to open up the next window. And I thought that was the right move, right? And usually the Eagles don't talk like that because they want to say we can win the Super Bowl next year, the new norm. But I thought Howie was right on that. I was fine with the Jalen Reagor pick. He was one of my guys I liked in this draft. And I think that you look at what – talking about quarterback play and wide receiver play. Look at the quarterbacks he played with at TCU. Yeah. Like Carson Wentz to him is going to be basically John Elway the minute he walks in the door because he's a real quarterback. Mm-hmm. I like Reagor. I didn't really care for Jefferson. I was fine with that. I thought the Hurts pick was crazy until I started to think what they're doing, just like everybody else. But he's got to – like, think about the last 3 or 4 drafts. How many guys on this team under the age of 25 do you believe in? Myles Sanders? We all believe in him? I do. Mm-hmm. Barnett? Yeah, Barnett's a wild card, right? I like Goddard a lot, but there's not much. It's so, like, if this is going to work, especially to just kind of weave Wentz back in, if they're going to have an expensive quarterback and build a championship team around him, you got to have young, cheap talent. So I'm worried about that. I don't know if it was Douglas's fault, Howie's fault, but I'm just worried they don't have enough young, cheap talent, moving forward.
Well, the best thing is the scapegoat's gone because I do think Joe Douglas had a very large impact on the draft. Again, that's just – I have a friend that works in the scouting department for the Eagles, and she at least alluded to me that Joe Douglas was the person that really was like, this is the person that we're in on. This is the person you guys need to study. And then they would end up drafting that same person. She said this draft was completely different. Howie Roseman gave her.
My dog's not a Howie fan. My dog's not a Howie fan.
My dog barks. His dog barks almost every episode it happens. But
I'm back.
To me,
that's amazing.
I think now that Joe Douglas is gone, now we're really seeing this draft is a complete indicator now of what Howie Roseman can be for the Eagles going forward. So I agree with you. I don't think they did enough. I think they did misjudge a couple situations, but I think also people get lost in them letting Malcolm Jenkins go as the youth movement, and then they actually didn't really do a youth movement at all.
Tyler,
besides that move,
Tyler's throwing
to me,
the hand.
I agree. I'm agreeing. The Malcolm thing was way just blown out of proportion. He's just not that good of a player anymore.
He's a linebacker. He's basically a linebacker.
Yeah,
that plays
right. But I think Howie's best attribute or trait, I should say, is whether he misses in the draft or not, he always makes up for it. Always, whether it be free agency or trades. And that is the beautiful thing. You're not all, because there's teams like Ted Thompson in Green Bay, who's a great drafter, but if you're not active in free agency or you're not making trades, you're only going so far. And so with Roseman, yeah, he's had some sketchy drafts. I didn't love the Derek Barnett pick. I didn't love the Sidney Jones pick. There was a couple, even the Jalen Hurts pick. There's times where I'm like, I don't agree with you, but at the end of the day, Howie Roseman always gets the roster, at least on paper, heading into training camp. you think that this roster is going to compete. And that's what, and I'm going to bring it up because there was a tweet that you sent out and like right after free agency started, and you were like, Howie Roseman's indicating that the Eagles are not going to be competitive in 2020. And I thought that was nuts.
Well, I said their Super Bowl window is closed, like the one that opened in 2017. And I believe that. I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, but I do think they're going to be competitive. And I agree with Howie. I think they're trying to open up the next one, whether that's 21, 22. But I don't think they can win the Super Bowl this year. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I hope I am. I hope they're great.
But why would you trade for a 29-year-old Darius Slay?
So that happened after I think I sent that tweet. And you're right. That is the one move this offseason that didn't – and I like Slay. I mean, obviously Slay's a really good player. But that didn't fit with the other ones, right? I mean, think about all the other moves they made. That they let Malcolm go, whatever the reason, leadership, youth, he's not as good anymore. But like if you're going to trade for that player, that was weird. Tyler, that was weird to me because that didn't fit with the other moves. The other moves were all kind of like, all right. I thought
that Javon Hargrave is another big one in free agency. So that
27. He'll be around a while. It's 27.
Well, I mean, but it's still a win now move, right? I mean, you don't pay that. So if you're saying you're not going to be able to compete for a year or two, then he's going to be 28 or 29. I guess where the biggest
defensive tackles don't decline like corners, right? You lose a step at corner at 30, 31. You're different, right? I think Hargrave could be good for a while.
I think you're right. I think he thinks the 2017 Super Bowl window is closed. I think he's trying to open a new one, and I think they're not looking at this season as not an opportunity to do that, though, because
there's definitely a lot of variables that need to happen. Of course,
the money was the Malcolm Jenkins move. The money was the motive. They thought, Jenkins wants to be extended. We keep deteriorating him as a safety and making him pretty much a linebacker because his most snaps last year were in the box, which is basically another linebacker.
Indicated that they weren't.
None.
I thought that
none.
In my head,
they even brought Jason Peters back.
Well, but they let Peters go to play Dillard, right? They may be willingly downgrading at left tackle. Maybe.
Which and that is so. It's to your point. Yes, there's a lot of relying on youth and that would be another one for me of the 25 and under. I think Dillard's a hell of a player, and I think there's way too much. He's scrutinized way too much right now. Let's actually give him an offseason, give him a chance. And it sucks because this offseason is so affected by everything.
Right. But, and the Dillard is all like the criticism is more about personality, mental stuff than it is his play. Because I didn't think he was bad at left tackle last year. He was bad at right tackle the one game, but
right.
I was fine at left tackle.
And that's the stuff that I'm not in the locker room, so I have no idea. Right. And that's something that we've talked about on previous episodes. If he's a big baby over playing time or going to throw fits about certain things, breakdowns or whatever, then, we don't see that. We can only judge what we see on the field. So,
I mean, you turned a player that you think is going to pretty much be a linebacker's cap hit into Darius Slay, Nicole Roby Coleman, Will Parks, and Jalen Mills' contract. To me, letting Malcolm Jenkins go signaled, yes, they lose their leader. Yes, they lose really their most consistent player on defense from a snap standpoint. But they thought we're not going to lose, especially with this cap situation. We're not going to keep giving resources to a player that we every year view less.
If the Eagles retained Malcolm Jenkins, would there have been a narrative that said, "Hey, Howie Roseman is doing that thing he does where he's paying guys, veterans that he shouldn't pay for, or guys that have been here for a long time"? I think that would have been a narrative. So it's like it's.
I think that would have been a
100%. And that's what I'm saying. It was just an all-around right move to move on from Malcolm. I don't think that was a thing that was, we're not going to win this year. If Malcolm was on the team, I think they may be less set up at safety than what they currently are at. I like their safety position.
I'd have to agree with you because, I'd rather have Malcolm Jenkins no matter what. But if you look at when they have McLeod and they have Jenkins, their backups have always been awful. So now they have Kayvon Wallace, Will Parks, Graydon Arnold. I like Graydon. Yeah, they have Mills. I like Graydon Arnold, also out of Baylor, the undrafted free agent they got. I think he's going to make the team. It's hard. Joe, because now you're looking at a team that's probably going to play majority dime on defense next year. You're looking at Will Parks. You probably play sub linebacker. Nate Gary's probably going to be your number one linebacker. Instead of having just Malcolm Jenkins play, now you have all these guys that can do that certain role in Mills, Parks, Wallace. That's why you had
Slay. Were you
to
wanting
me.
the Eagles to sign Byron Jones?
Yeah.
That's what it – okay. So that
and I mean, look, I think Slay's probably better, but he's a little bit older. And you don't have to give up draft picks to get Byron Jones.
Right, that's all I was on. I mean, Jones was younger, perfect fit in the system, I thought, in this defense. And then didn't have the
draft pick. And I think with Byron Jones, I was worried about corners. Like, I never know which ones are going to age great because it's just hard, right? Like, Darrelle Revis was the best maybe football player in the world for about 4 years, and then he couldn't play anymore. So, like, I thought about Byron Jones. I was like, all right, we know he can play safety. Maybe he could become a Malcolm kind of player, corner to safety as his career goes on. Yeah. I don't know if Slay could do that. I hope Slay is great for the next 3 years, and they open up a new window. That move was weird to me. As much as I like Slay, that didn't fit. And to go back to the one we talked about earlier, like in terms of the thinking this offseason was big picture, not this year. Like, why not draft a receiver in the second round? Why not draft a defensive end in the second round that could help? They basically drafted, whatever you think of the Hurts thing. I know we did that already. They drafted a player in the second round that probably, like in a perfect world, won't see the field. Or,
but you shouldn't be. You should never be counting on a second round pick to make an impact in year one. So it shouldn't. That hasn't.
If it's a running back,
but even then, I mean, they didn't. They had Howard here.
Well, especially now with this change.
When Myles Sanders did last year, they won't make the playoffs without a second round pick last year.
Oh no, I agree. I think
right. The Eagles, Tyler's right. They never try to put that expectations on rookies going into the season, though, because that wasn't the expectation.
It was
of Sanders.
You're definitely going to have a lot more misses if you're thinking, "Hey, we got to draft for this year." That's that's terrible.
Yeah, but I still would have took Mims.
Of course,
Mims and Rager long term would have been.
I said a lot of words my mother would not be happy about the night of draft in round 2. It was.
Yeah, because you're not going to get an argument from us on that one, Joe. I like Jalen Hurts the player. I don't like drafting a backup quarterback in the second round that you're hoping never plays. That's never. I never want to hope a second round pick never plays. That's not something I want to do.
Right.
All right, but I mean, we could pretty much wrap this up anyways right now because that was a great discussion we had. We already rolled into like 46 minutes of straight recording. Joe, we greatly appreciate you coming on the show. WIP, check you guys out. Also, Joe, you write for NJ.com, correct? Because that's what I'm seeing is NJ.com articles is where you can find
NJ.com, yep.
All right, make sure you read Joe's
yourself,
article.
My man. Plug yourself.
At Joe Giglio.
Everybody knows already.
6 o'clock every night on WIP. This was fun, guys.
Joe,
thanks for coming on.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you very much for coming on.
It was good debate. I like debating about it, at least. We had good civil conversation. I feel like I know more about your Wentz stance now than your articles told me.
That's why it's just easier to talk it through, right? You say something, you tweet something.
Yeah, it's so much easier. 180 characters doesn't do enough justice.
Guys, this was fun. Good luck with this podcast. I'll share this out whenever it goes up, and this was fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Yep, no problem, Joe. Thank you.